Another question that I get asked all the time. This is from somebody called Fawn. She goes, my client is a young German indie band by the name of Fawn. Kata, who I think is the singer, is the front frau, as we say, very powerful and down to earth. Thank you, Cody. And down to earth. Hence, she thinks it will never be possible to be supporting act of Incubus ever. So I'm going to forgive her English. I think she wants to open for Incubus. And she goes, I happen to disagree. She does not only admire the music and sound, but the lifestyle and the down to earth attitude, and is a great fan. Here's the part I love about this question: is it, how do I make this happen? Cheers, Mona. All right, Mona, first thing you got to ask, before you can get. Unfortunately, 2 or 3 years ago, I might have been able to help you more on that one with Incubus, but not today as much. But the truth is, even back then, I'm not sure I could help you. But so, to answer your question, first I'm going to play you a little video. Let me go back to our course there again, Cody. Put me on the old ME there. Or IVJ. Let me go back up here. We talk about all the different kinds of things you need to know in the music business in our course, right? And there is, of course, a section on touring. Let's go to Me2 code. There you go. Get us in there side by side. No. Okay, so the touring part of this thing right here is very important. We talked about it, and one of the things we talk about is how to actually build a strategy. There is some of the great careers. It wasn't all accidental how they become big live acts, right? There's a process that we talk about here, and one of the key steps in that building a live career can be the use of support slots. So I'm going to play you a little video, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about how that works and how to get on the radar of a band. So, Cody? One of the most time-honored and effective ways to get in front of more people is by the skillful use of support slots on other shows. The idea is pretty simple. If you're a great band playing in front of another artist's audience, it's inevitable that you will make some new friends while you're there. And when you do, those new fans you made will come to your headline shows. One of the top managers in the music business is a gentleman by the name of Dalton Sim. He's the manager of Grammy Award-winning band Fun. He used support dates early on in Fun's career, long before they had big hits, to help build their touring base. When they were fortunate enough to land a support slot for a bigger band in a 1,000-seat club, they made it a point to always come back to that market and do a headline date of their own and a 200-seater and try to sell that out. Along the way, that band developed their live performing skills, and when they finally had some big hits, their touring base and performance skills were already where they needed to be. But they're still taking their time, taking the right steps, and have yet to do a headline arena tour. I suspect that's the next step when they put out a new album. In my own experience as a manager, I think that every chance you get to play in front of a bigger crowd than you can reach on your own is worth considering. Does that mean you should take any support slot? No. It should be another artist whose audience might reasonably enjoy what you're doing, but it does not need to be perfect in the early days of your career. Too often I find a young artist, when presented an opportunity to support another artist, they turn into a rock critic and think, I don't really like that band or that artist. And they forget that that artist they're talking about is playing in front of 1,000 people while they might be drawing 100 on their own. If that's you, let me give you something to think about. The risk of improper exposure or association with the wrong artist is so far outweighed by the risk that nobody will notice you at all that it's not worth worrying about when you're just getting started. Some of the biggest headliners in this business played support slots early in their career that in retrospect might not have looked like matches made in heaven when they happened. I can recall Bon Jovi opened for 38 Special, U2 opened for the Jay Giles Band, Van Halen opened for Joan Jett and the Runaways, and Jimi Hendrix once opened for the Monkees. When you're offered an opportunity to support for bigger artists early in your career, the answer should be mostly yes. So let's talk about how you're going to get those support slots. If you have a manager or agent, it will be up to them to look out for upcoming tours and to use all their contacts and all their influence to make those connections. If it's down to the band, make friends with other bands. Make friends with those local club bookers. Find out what artists are coming to your town and try to contact them any way you can. The more you ask, the more likely you are to get one. As you build your reputation as a headliner, you'll get better support slots. First on local gigs for a national act, then perhaps on some national tours, and perhaps even on some of the top festivals. All right, there you have it, folks. That's from our RenmanMB Insider's Guide to Today's Music Business. One of 150-ish, Code? 150 plus. I should know that, but God, at some point I was just like, Cody is whipping me like an old dog, like an old nag. Get to the finish line, old man, come on! And I kind of stopped counting it anyway. But there's some great stuff in there, and hopefully that addresses your question a little bit in the general sense, right? I think the thing that folks don't realize out there when they see a big show come to town like Incubus or Fawn, was it Mona, excuse me, is that when you see a big tour, more often than not, okay, that bill that you see, and I think with Incubus this year, it's, what is it, Incubus and Deftones and Death from Above 1979, and there's one other cool band on there, right? Those things are prearranged in a number of different ways. Maybe the promoter has an idea of who they'd like to put together. Maybe the label got involved and was able to influence the manager or the promoter to take a certain band out. So by the time you see those shows in the paper and advertise, Mona, it's too late. You got to get well ahead of that. There is the best way to move to the front of the line, no matter who it is, whether in Incubus this was certainly true, but not just them, is what I like to call friend of band. If you can be friends with the band, then they're going to just tell their manager, the promoter, the label who we're putting on the show, and that'll be the end of it, you know. But those things happen well ahead of time. I think a better approach for you, Mona, would be to consider all of those, but you better be making those phone calls and lobbying 6 months before you hear about it, is to focus on building a live business in your own market. And when you do that, in those rare opportunities of a support act comes along, and that's more likely to happen at a club level than it is at a notch above that. Make sure you're in the mix, because when some manager goes, who's the cool local band in town, that your name comes up. That's the way you make those things happen. And with respect to Incubus, is no different for them as well. I was tempted to call up Joe Lilac today and say, hey, Joe, how can we get on that show? But I kind of already know the answer. So anyway, Mona, first off, thanks for joining us and asking your question. And I hope that answers your question. And I hope you'll take a look, if you're just starting off as a manager. Show one more time our RenmanMB Insider's Guide to Today's Music Business.